My name is Ron Pugh, and I help here at the museum, and I'm hoping to do a lot more work on the biosphere. That if you had a chance to look at that chamber next door, and Doc has some great ideas to grow plants and insects like it was the days before the flood with all the conditions. So, and it will be online. You can be able to go to his website and look it up, and you can actually see what he's doing inside that chamber over there. So that's exciting. But today we have a speaker, Dr. Jerry Bergman, and you got to understand this thing here. It blows my mind, but I found out that he is the top listed as the top 10 smartest people in the whole world. And you have him here. That's equivalent to 20 master's degrees, and he does hold 9 degrees in science, and you can see that on the biosphere, and 9 degrees in science. So I think he knows what he's talking about. And he's a great friend of Dr. Baugh, and he's done a lot of lectures here. And he just recently came back. Well, actually, he spent a week in Fiji with Dr. Baugh over there. And they took the Pearls in Paradise book and went to all the schools, and they witnessed it was 65,000 kids, or is it more? I know Hindu schools, they were able to get in there, and
Muslim schools.
Muslim, and be able to teach them about Jesus Christ and his word and truth, and isn't that great? And then afterwards, he does have a table back here, and he's got 13 books. He's written over 13 books, but he's got 13 books on that back table written by himself on evolution and anything you want to know about science. So someday when you read them all, you might be as smart as him. Well, now we hope you all enjoy the lesson that you're going to give today. And like I say, afterwards, you can see his books. And here's one of his latest books that he's published. And he can probably tell you more about them. But thank you, everybody, for coming today.
Bacteria have a bad reputation, a bad rep, and they don't deserve the bad rep that they have. Basically, what I'll show you is that we need bacteria for life. Bacteria and viruses serve a very important role. And without them, you and I wouldn't be alive. So they're necessary. And they serve very important functions, which fortunately now is finally making it in the mainstream. It's called probiotics. And if you're very aware of health information, diet, and so on, you're aware of the necessity for consuming bacteria. And therefore, this is not anything new to you. 20 years ago, I think if I would have said this, people probably would have wondered about my sanity. Because indeed, it's a very strong change from their bad, period, to the vast majority are good. And that's what I'll stress. But before I go through my PowerPoint, there's a video I want you to see, which is very brief. But actually, before I show that, a question that comes up over and over again is, and I was just talking to somebody today, and that is, do we really have a good case for creation and against evolution? And yes, we do. The evidence is absolutely, unequivocally overwhelming against evolution. And I'll give you my 5-minute version. I have an hour version, but don't have time. I'll give you my 5-minute version, basically, on why we have this case. And number one, evolution is based on 2 very simple things. One is we have variety, genetic variety, as a result of mutations. And Darwin himself tried to figure out what is the source of genetic variety. He never could figure that out. But today, scientists, with very few exceptions, agree that the source of genetic variety is mutations, period. Now, when I was at the medical school, we worked with mutations. In fact, that's what I did. I worked with cancer in cancer research. And cancer is caused by mutations. And therefore, we know now today, because we have lots of research, that if you are exposed to radiation, okay, the radiation will cause mutations, which will cause changes in the genome, which are almost always negative. Now, it's possible some are positive. I found almost no examples. 99.99% are clearly negative, and therefore you are never going to get enough mutations to produce evolution. Evolution is going to be going backward because mutations accumulate. And that's not debatable. If I could carry it on the plane, I'd carry my radiation samples and pass them around. And the radiation, of course, gamma, I've several gamma emitters. Gamma radiation is the most dangerous, and that will cause mutations. If it causes mutations in somatic cells, it causes cancer and other problems. If it causes mutations in your germ cells, it will then cause a genetic mutation which can be passed on to your offspring. Okay, no doubt about that. And I usually ask for volunteers. Since you don't have any gamma sources of radiation, maybe when you go to the airport you could offer to lay down on this machine there and go through the x-ray and get some x-rays, get some mutations, and then your first child will have some abnormally high IQ or some, well, you know, that's silly. Or when you have an x-ray at your doctor's office, they put lead shields to protect part of your body, and maybe you can say, I don't want the lead shields, I want a full body radiation. The doctor would probably look at you and say, yeah, maybe we should call the psychiatric department next door. We know that mutations are harmful, but yet that is the source of genetic variety for evolution. So evolution is occurring, but it's going backward. And it's going backward because mutations are accumulating in the genome, and in the medical field we are very, very aware of this because we're the ones that have to fix the problem. And therefore, a lot of the work that we do in the medical field is trying to fix the problem of damaged mutations. And that's another hour lecture. I won't go into that, but they estimate there are about 5,000 genetic diseases around today as a result of the accumulation of mutations. Now, if you go back 1,000 years, we would find many less. If you go back to Adam and Eve, we would find how many mutations are in Adam and Eve? None. So the evidence is overwhelming, and when you talk about this, when I was at the medical school, and you mention this to people, they of course acknowledge it. In fact, the estimate is that each generation carries about 100 new mutations. So your children, and of course this doesn't surprise mothers or fathers, your children have 100, on the average, new mutations compared to you. Your grandchildren have 100 more. Now, a lot of those are lethal. And that's why, and I've done surveys of my students, and I find this is pretty close, about of every 5 pregnancies, about 2 to 3 end up in spontaneous abortion. And what causes that is, in a vast majority of cases, mutations. And if you've had a spontaneous, and just a survey here, maybe we could just go around quickly. How many pregnancies and how many were carried to term that you know of? Now, a lot of times you're pregnant and you lose the child and don't even know it. Okay? Just going around. Some examples.
I was pregnant 3 times.
3 times?
Lost 2.
And lost 2. Okay, there you go. Anybody else?
11 pregnancies carried 8 to term.
11 pregnancies? Okay, so your odds are a little bit better, but on the other hand, you lost 3 children. And we blame each other. I deal with this with the hospital. We blame other people or other things for this. But, oh, got somebody back there. Go ahead.
Had 4 pregnancies and lost 1. So
And
5 pregnancies.
5 pregnancies. Okay, so you're pretty close to the statistical average. So when this happens, we often blame things, the husband or who knows. In most cases, it's a result of the body evaluates the developing embryo and says, too many problems, will spontaneously abort. And so that's a quality control. That's a result of the accumulation of mutations. My guess is Eve probably had, 20 pregnancies. Some of the ancient books, Josephus' book on the history of the Jews, I think he said that Eve had 11 pregnancies and 11 children, I recall. So my guess is if she would have had 30 pregnancies, she would have probably had 30 children that made it to term. So the number is increasing because of the accumulation of mutations. So there's no doubt about that. So, and I haven't gotten any volunteers to lay down on the x-ray machine and be zapped. Some of you women who have mammograms know that, and they probably told you this, mammograms actually increase your risk of breast cancer.
No, I've never heard that.
It does. We know that. But we have a risk-benefit ratio, and the risk-benefit ratio is such that there's a certain risk, and they call that a secondary cancer. So we have a name for it, secondary cancer. So there's a risk, but on the other hand, the benefits, because the successful treatment for cancer is, by and large, early detection. And early detection, and I bet some of you women here have had breast cancer. Early detection means we can do it with a needle biopsy, or we can do it with a non-radical mastectomy. And that now is the trend, early detection. We remove the tumor before it spreads, and quite often the tumor is in the duct. So therefore you can remove it without even any major surgery at all. You just go in the nipple into the duct and remove the cancer. And most of them, I don't remember what percent, but most of them begin in the duct, and we can go in there and remove it. So I think about 60% now of all women diagnosed with breast cancer are able to survive it. Okay? So again, we're talking about x-rays, even for medical purposes, increase the risk of cancer. So we know that mutations are not beneficial. So what mechanism does evolution have? None. So evolution is impossible. And we know it's going the wrong way. And doctors know that, and that's why I mentioned we have 5,000 diseases caused by mutations. There's no question about that. So when people say evolution is proved, it's not. It's overwhelming evidence. And I have yet to anyone, as I said, volunteer to sit. Maybe we could call a hospital and say, I'd like to, this lady would like to spend some time in your x-ray machines and get some radiation. Adversely. So we know mutations are a problem. And by the way, the man who discovered this, he put fruit flies in an x-ray machine and bombarded them with x-rays and got all kinds of mutations. And he was given the Nobel Prize for that because he was going to further increase the rate of evolution. And that's what they said. So they were optimistic in the 20s. So they're optimistic that by x-raying you gals with x-ray machines, that we could speed up evolution and we could evolve faster because of this technology. And again, the Nobel Prize, the most honorable prize in science, worth about $1 million today. So they thought this was a critical breakthrough so we can speed up evolution. And guess what? Wrong. Didn't work. And now it's embarrassing when they realize. And of course, at first they didn't realize the harm that x-rays did. They took a while. In fact, Edison's co-worker who worked with x-rays ended up losing his fingers, his hand, his arm, and died. And Edison said, no more x-rays. When they wanted to x-ray him, he said, I'm not being x-rayed. That's it. No more experience with x-rays. And it took us a while to realize that indeed x-rays and radiation, period, causes a problem. Marie Curie, the gal who discovered a number of radioactive materials like polonium-210, etc., she ended up dying, of course, from radiation poisoning, as did many people who worked with radioactive materials in that time. And so it clearly is harmful. Therefore, evolution has no mechanism. Therefore, evolution cannot occur.